Alrighty, I am showing noon on the dot, so we will go ahead and get things started. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the American Family Insurance Dream Bank, where we believe in the transformative power of dreams. My name is Andy Frisky. I'm a senior coordinator here at Dream Bank, and on behalf of our entire team, so thrilled to have you all with us here today. As we go ahead and kick things off, we always like to poll the audience where folks are tuning in from and encourage you to share in the chat section if you are comfortable doing so. I'm from sunny downtown Madison, Wisconsin here today. And we'll be utilizing that chat function here today as well for any sort of comments or questions that you may have for Steve along the way. Before we go ahead and kick things off, though, I'd love to take a couple minutes here and introduce you to DreamBank, whether it be your first time or you're a seasoned veteran. Here at American Family Insurance, we believe that communities are stronger and the future is brighter when people are actively pursuing their dreams, and that's why DreamBank was created. It's an inspirational community destination and virtual experience that is dedicated to dreamers everywhere. Our offerings are designed to help you celebrate the dream journey, to overcome obstacles, and to stay motivated. I'll go ahead and I'll drop some pertinent links in the chat today for our upcoming programmings to learn more about what we do at DreamBank, as well as all of our previous events that we have as well. But I'd like to introduce our featured speaker here today, Steve McIrvin. Give me one moment here. My Outlook decided to shut down the bio. Steve, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to you, though I feel you could do a much better job of introducing yourself and explaining kind of why you're speaking on this today. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to Steve. Steve, feel free to take it away.
Hi, everybody. My name is Steve McIrvin. I'm coming to you from sunny Blacksburg, Virginia. We're enjoying the fall weather here. I have about almost 10 years of experience in consumer electronics, including smart home. So I'll talk a little bit about my journey with IoT and smart home at the beginning of my consumer electronics career. And then I took a detour into drones, believe it or not. That was a lot of fun. And then now for the last 3.5 years, I've been working for Wyze Labs, and I work remotely from here in Virginia, but Wyze is headquartered in Seattle, Washington, and they make a huge variety of smart home devices, and we make cameras and security products as well. So we'll talk a little bit more about Wyze stuff, but today is really focused on IoT and the overall experience of what smart home can be and will be and hopefully should be if we keep going on the path that we are in. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll do a little PowerPoint presentation, and I'll walk you through that, and we'll take some time to have some polls and interactivity throughout. And then at the very end, I'll try to save at least 5-10 minutes for questions so that you guys can really pick my brain, and if I know the answer, I'll help you, and if I don't, I'll try to refer you to some good resources where you can find your own answers and do some of the research there. Okay, so you should see a PowerPoint slide called Connected Living, Exploring the Future of IoT. Does everyone see that?
Yep, it's looking good, Steve.
Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to switch to that right now for me. So I'm going to go right into the agenda of what we'll be talking about. First, we'll just start out with the benefits of IoT, a simple definition that I have, and what IoT can do for you. Obviously, we want to be able to have some of the features and benefits and really the fun part of that. So the next, I will go into what types of smart devices are out there. There's just a huge array, and so we'll try to cover just scratch the surface of those. Third, we'll cover some tips for getting started. I know that a lot of you are just beginning on your smart home journey, so I want to kind of give you some of the lessons that I learned maybe the hard way in the years that I've been working in this industry, and so I'll try to help you prevent some of the mistakes that I've made and maybe hopefully save you some money as you enter into this space. And then finally, the whole presentation is really the future of IoT. So I'll try to intersperse these tidbits about what I think the future will be throughout the presentation. I'll have some milestones that I think we'll see along the way to know that we've arrived in that future. And then we'll look at that more holistically towards the end of the presentation. And then finally, like I said, I'll save some time for the Q&A. All right, so part one, introduction. I hope you like some of my AI generated images there. Obviously, that's a grass hut, but I just asked the machine learning LLM to make me a smart home mixed with a medieval hut. And so that's what it came up with. So we'll see if we can do better than that. So what is IoT? I think the critical part here to understand is that we have a definition of what is IoT and what is not. And this is just to help you build up a framework of how to understand all these devices and where they fit in your overall lifestyle. So my first portion of that definition is the physical object. And before you ask, yes, that is a real toaster with a touch screen and it's connected to Wi-Fi. And I think it's about $400. So I don't think I would necessarily buy one of those, but that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. It's an actual thing. It's not just a computer or a laptop or something like that, but it's an ordinary thing in your house that you would normally have before IoT, and now we can internetify it, if you will. And so the second part of my definition is that this device needs to be able to act. And so the toaster can toast, or a sensor can record data. And so those are two. It has to do either one of those things. Most of the time, it's going to do both of those things. And then finally, the I portion of IoT is really that it's controllable via the internet. So it can download data or upload data, or you can interact with someone via the public internet. And we'll get into a couple examples of things that we kind of look advanced, but we're actually not meeting my definition because they were too early or they don't do that. So that maybe these negative examples will help you understand more about the structure of this definition and help you remember what I'm trying to say here. So the first one, the first kind of smart, what I thought device that I ever had was growing up, it was a remote controlled plug, and it just did one thing. You press a button and you could be 300 feet away and it would turn off whatever was plugged into that outlet. But it's not IoT. It was smart, what I thought at the time, but it doesn't have that I portion, obviously. It wasn't, this was before the internet really even existed, and so it wasn't an IoT device. Now, the second device that I'm going to talk about, and you can hopefully see my video here, is this device called an Amazon Dash. And so in 2013, I was working at Amazon, and this is one of the products that I was building at the time. And we called it an IoT device at that time. It just does two things, basically. You can press this button and record your voice, or you can press this button and scan a barcode. And we said, okay, that's an IoT device because it doesn't have a screen and you need to set it up over the internet, and it can connect to the internet by itself. But in retrospect, this is really just all it could do was send your voice to the Amazon Fresh app, or send the barcode to the Amazon Fresh app. So if you think about it, this is more just like a keyboard or an alternative input device. The same with this next example of the old webcams on a PC, or some of the original kind of advanced cameras the digital cameras we had out there. A lot of people were calling those Internet of Things or IoT or smart home cameras, but they required having a computer with them. They didn't actually talk to the internet themselves. They were just more of a computer accessory or peripheral. Now, in contrast, the new cloud cams actually do connect to the internet all by themselves. They don't need a PC. They have a Wi-Fi built in. They have storage. They can interact directly with cloud computing and AI and do a whole lot more than those original cameras. So now we have true IoT cameras. So to help you put IoT further into context, I just wanted to show you the place of where IoT exists in the overall kind of diagram of information technology, IT, and consumer electronics. So obviously IT has been around since the original computers, right? And now consumer electronics came shortly thereafter. You think places like Radio Shack or Circuit City or Computer City or Best Buy selling all these things that are geared towards household electronics. So IoT is just one portion of that, but I think it's the growing portion. It's where a lot of the innovation is happening. So you don't see like digital SLRs that are big consumer electronics thing, or hi-fi stereos. You don't see a lot of those traditional categories growing that much, but now that you add Wi-Fi to them and you do streaming, that's where the growth is really occurring in CE. And so when we talk about IoT, and specifically out of all of IT and CE, there's two real categories of IoT, and I want to focus on just the smart home category. If you look at industrial IoT, which is sensors and automation in like a factory, or imagine a crop sensor like for watering or for soil on a big farm that's connected to a cell phone tower. Those are all kind of industrial IoT, and they're definitely IoT devices. But for today's presentation, we're really going to focus on smart home. And that intersection between smart home and industrial IoT is probably where we would find a small business. A small business may not have the budget for using industrial IoT devices, and they're gonna buy consumer smart home, but they're still going to get a lot of the automation and the data out of it, like an industrial IoT user would. So for today, let's just focus on smart home, and we're going to go into some of the benefits of what these smart home devices can really do for you. So I'm going to go ahead and turn my video back on the slide here, and I've got this mental model called what I want to talk about is the 7 C's, and you can think of like the high C's, the seven C's of sailing the 7 C's, and it's really just 7 words that begin with C that help you understand what you should be able to expect when you buy one of these devices or when you make your whole home smart. And the first C word is really about control. And it's allowing me to control one of these devices when I'm not near it, when it's far away, or even when I'm not in the house. It's really convenient to be able to turn something on or turn something off or find data. An example of this for me is when I go to bed at night and I realize that I've left a light on in the basement or something like that. I don't want to walk all the way downstairs. I can just turn that off with my phone or with my smart assistant. And that feature is enabled by the next C called connectivity, because it's remote, it's using Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or another radio technology. And that connectivity through the internet also allows me to control that device even when I'm not in the house. The original smart homes were really local only. If you think about some of the very expensive rich people mansions, or if you remember that MTV show called Cribs and they had automation there, that usually wasn't controllable via the internet. But now it's 100 times cheaper and it's a lot more powerful because we can control it from our phones from halfway around the world if we want to. The next C that I have in this model is really about convenience. And for me, that means automation. So the example is the light that I left on in the basement, well, that can be turned off automatically for me via an automated rule, either that I create or we'll see later, maybe the machine, the AI starts to create for me. And this is enabled by all that connectivity that we talked about. The sensors can talk to a light so it can detect if there's someone in the room and it turns on when I walk into a room, or if I haven't been in the room for a while and it knows that there's no people in the room, it can turn that off. Or maybe a voice command, I can kick off a whole routine and there can be multiple steps in there, and I can have it do a whole series of tasks for me just with one simple command, and it's very convenient and automated for me. One of the things I really enjoy about my IoT printer is that it will go ahead and buy toner for itself automatically. If it runs low, I think it's like around 10 or 20% of one of the colors in that laser printer, it will make an order and Amazon ships it, and it gets there like a week later. And one of the things that provides me not only just the convenience of that automation, I never have to physically place that order, but Amazon actually gives me a decent discount for having that auto order set up. And so that leads me into the next C, which is called cost savings. And I think that's a lot of the reasons people buy a smart home device, especially in terms of, like, think of thermostat that allows you to automatically set the temperature back when you're not around, or when it's late at night and you're warm in your nice bed, and then you want it to automatically increase in the morning, and you don't have to get up and set that. So now with programmable thermostat used to be very difficult to control, and it was a pain to try to set those up. But now with IoT thermostat, your smartphone has a very appealing and easy to use interface. And then, like I said, since that connectivity element, you can program that around the world. I'll use that a lot with my smart thermostat. If I'm on vacation, I will check in at the last gas station before I'm coming home, and I'll go ahead and raise the temperature or lower it and make it what I want it to be for when I arrive. The next C in this model is all about customization. And if you think about some of the original luxury smart homes that I was talking about, maybe Bill Gates comes to mind. He was kind of famous when he was in his heyday at Microsoft after maybe he just retired from Microsoft. He had this amazing mega mansion up back where I used to live in Seattle, and it was very, very automated. He spent millions of dollars to make it fully customized to each guest. When you walked into the house, if you were a resident or a guest, you got a little pin to wear on your jacket or somewhere, and it allowed you to have your own preferences. As you walked around, it would play your favorite type of music. The art pieces on the wall in his digital frames would adapt to your particular preferences for art style. Maybe it would change the temperature for you. Very, very customized. And you can do a lot of those same things that house was doing now for much, much cheaper and much, much easier to use without all the custom programming that he had his engineers do. So along with that temperature customization that I talked about, that brings us to the whole area of comfort. So if we think about all the devices, you're probably going to think about the thermostat. Maybe you have a Nest thermostat already at home, which is one of the most common ones. But you can get a smart dehumidifier or a smart fan or a lot of other comfort-based devices as well. And then the last C in my mental model here of the 7 Cs, I have to admit, I'm cheating a little bit. It's called security. And if you want a real C word that defines security, it actually makes a C word, you can think about cameras. But security, as we know, is a lot more than cameras. It includes sensors. It includes the ability to turn a light on in response to motion. And so I really like the fact that there is at least a C in the middle of the word, and that helps me categorize all of these benefits of the smart home experience. Okay, so now as we go into the next section, I want to go ahead and give you guys a chance to respond, and go ahead and take out your smartphone and go to your camera app and scan that QR code that I have on the screen. And that will take you to a SurveyMonkey poll that will ask you one simple question. It's just one question, and multiple choice. Don't have to type anything. Just hit the one that you most resonate with. There might not be an exact match for your situation there, but basically just try to find the best answer that answers the question where you are at in your smart home or IoT smart home journey for yourself or your family. Everybody getting that to work? I want to go ahead and check on the survey here real quick. See if looks like one person responded already. See if anybody else. Oh yeah, lots of people did. Okay, great. Okay, we'll keep refreshing that. I'll give you just one more minute to do that. Thank you for responding. I'm glad you were able to get that to work. Okay, so it looks like the majority of you have some devices and want to go deeper. So we'll let you guys look at that. So it looks like some of you are waiting to move to a new place. That's definitely where I was a couple of years ago. I didn't want to invest in the house that I was at, and I wanted to make sure that I was able to do it right. So that's when I really began in earnest. Was about 3 years ago. I moved to my current house and started installing stuff hardwired. Up until that point, I'd used only batteries. But that's the nice thing about the battery devices is that you can do them if you're in an apartment, if you're in the basement of your parents' house, which is what we've got an adult son in our basement at this point. So the battery powered. So you can start fairly simple, actually. Okay, so let's go back and I got some water. If you need to get up and take a break, we'll go ahead and start on the next section here. But thank you for responding to that poll, and hopefully that gives you a good indication of where others are at. So we have a really diverse group in terms of the stage that you're at. So please keep in mind that there's no questions that are too hard or too easy at the end. We've got such a wide variety of places that we're all beginning our journey with here. So please make sure and ask any questions you have at the end. All right, so for our next section, we're going to deep dive into all the different types of smart devices that are out there. And you can see there's another AI generated image. I think that's supposed to be a smart thermostat that's also a rock. I tried to do like a Flintstones smart thermostat, but I think that looks more like a doorbell, I think, from what was actually generated. So not sure what it was trying to go for there, but it's interesting to play with some of these new image generation tools that are out there. All right, so the first area that I think a lot of people start with is lighting and power, and it's a
Oh,
very
Steve,
easy
I think
place
it's
to
still on
start.
the survey screen.
Oh, thank you.
No problem.
How's that?
There we go. Types of smart devices, lighting and
Perfect. Thank you so
power.
much.
Yep.
I think the first place that most people start with is in the lighting and power, just because it's very easy. So recommended first device, I think, is a smart plug. And you can see the Wyze outdoor smart plug there. It actually includes energy monitoring, that's tough to say, and two outlets, both of which are independently controllable. And you can see it's not like an in-wall receptacle, mostly because it's just a lot easier just to plug that in. You get 90% of the benefits just by plugging that plug into the wall. And you don't have to rewire anything. You don't need an electrician. And the same is true of a smart light bulb. You can just plug that right in and it replaces a traditional bulb directly. And now that's a Wyze color bulb. And we'll actually, if we'll see a video on this later, one of my recommendations is to start with this product. But the reason it's all rainbow colored like that, not that it actually looks like that in real life, but it's representing the fact we just needed one picture to show that this can be millions of colors and you can actually tune it to your different mood that day or your wall color or a certain ambiance you're trying to create. So I think this is where a lot of people start because it's just so fun, very convenient, very low barrier to entry to have just a plug-in and just a simple light bulb change. You can literally get started with both of these in less than 5 minutes. The third one that I think a lot of people do start with and they really want is the smart switch. And this is what I have in my basement to control it when I forget to turn off the lights down there. This is more work because you do need to understand how the wiring in your house works. And there's not a real easy way to replace the switch without to control the overhead lights in a room without doing the hard wiring. The good news is that they've gotten a lot simpler. The instructions are very simple and easy to follow now, and the features are really strong. And then the other place that I would recommend that you really start is with devices that are controllable, as all of these are that I'm showing you, via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth. Probably they'll use both. They'll probably use Bluetooth for something called provisioning to get the password enabled on the device, and then they'll use Wi-Fi for communication. But I wouldn't start just early in your journey. I wouldn't start with some of the more advanced radio types. I would start here with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi. So speaking of connectivity and communication types, that's the next place that you'll probably want to think about as far as categories of devices. And the one that starts to confuse people, and after they get beyond the simple plug and bulb over Wi-Fi, is this concept called a bridge. And a bridge does just what it sounds like. A bridge for traffic for cars allows your car to cross from one side of the river to the other. And so a bridge allows a data packet to cross from one type of network to another. And so in the example here, I'm showing a Philips Hue bridge. And so Philips light bulbs, for a lot of different reasons, and they're some of the earliest smart bulbs, have used a different protocol than Wi-Fi. It's a protocol called Zigbee. And so this is a bridge that takes your wired Ethernet from your home router, and it bridges that to the Zigbee network that those Philips smart bulbs can understand. And so that's a barrier for people. And I think they get bogged down in the terminology and get a little bit scared off just by the vocabulary. So don't be scared off by that. It's really just a list of terms to think about, and let the manufacturer tell you like the starter kit. So I think the easiest way to invest in some of these is to get a starter kit that includes a bridge and maybe 2 or 3 bulbs. Or you can, like I said, you can just do a bulb with Wi-Fi, but in the more advanced and longer range, and we'll get into the reasons why you need these other protocols, you may end up needing that bridge. The next term and the next type of device that caused people a little bit of confusion is called a hub. And the hub usually contains a bridge, but then it has more than just one bridge. It usually has multiple bridges. And then, more to the point, it actually can speak many different languages. If you're a Star Wars fan, like I am, there's a robot, a droid in there called C-3PO, and he was what's called a protocol droid. He always told people that he was a protocol droid and that he was fluent in 6 million forms of communication. And so that's what protocols are, is just a type of communications. And so hubs take one protocol and translate that protocol to another. And so on the screen there, you can see there's Zigbee and Thread and Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and something called Matter. And so a hub is going to translate between all of those different protocols, and it'll have a bridge or multiple bridges inside of it. And then the next point of confusion where people get tripped up is that sometimes you need a router as well. And sometimes the router contains a hub and contains a bridge inside it. And so it gets really crazy. Most of the time, though, a simple router is what enables your Wi-Fi devices and your laptop and your smartphone to talk to the internet. So the router is usually your gateway to the internet, but sometimes they have these smart hubs inside of them. So if you're finding that you need an upgraded Wi-Fi solution, go ahead and when you next look for a Wi-Fi router to buy, maybe look for one with a smart home hub inside of it. And so since this term router can be so confusing, this next slide is going to dive into all these different types of routers and kind of demystify that vocabulary a little bit for you. So the first type of router that you probably already have that you're listening to this call on right now is just a normal Wi-Fi router. And if you have one with like a jillion antennas and fancy black coloring on it, that might be a gaming router. And those are more expensive, and they provide a lot more speed sometimes, or at least lower latency, or at least some kind of features that appeal to gamers. But most people just have a normal Wi-Fi router, or possibly a mesh router. And this is another term that we're going to see here in a little bit, because there's several different types of mesh. But a mesh router just means that there's multiple routers that talk to each other, and they can provide excellent Wi-Fi coverage all over your home, especially if your home is long and spread out. You may see mesh routers that are all identical, like this picture I'm showing here is for a 4-pack of Wyze mesh routers, and those all have the same type of technology. It's the same unit, no matter how many of them you have. Some of the vendors out there, some of the brands will actually have a mesh node that's different when you plug it in versus one that's wireless, and they're incompatible, and you have to decide how many main units you want versus how many satellite nodes you want. So I try to steer people away from those. It's better to have one with all identical mesh nodes instead of the satellite nodes. The next type of router you're going to hear about is called what I call a combo router, or what Xfinity calls a residential gateway. And basically that means that it has a cable modem, or maybe a fiber ONT. A fiber modem is called an ONT in an optical network terminal. And basically a combo router has your Wi-Fi router and that Xfinity device, that cable modem inside of it. And so you'll probably rent those, and those are actually going to be a little bit more expensive because you're paying a high monthly fee than if you just went out and bought it. So if you have a combo router, that might be one way you can save money, is to buy a separate cable modem for maybe $50 for the cable modem, and then maybe a nice mesh router system. And the confusing thing about these combo routers is that they can also have satellite mesh nodes, and then sometimes you pay even more money for those. So if your combo router alone was $14 a month, you may be paying $18 a month to have the fancier mesh version, when you can just go buy a mesh version and it'll pay for itself alone for maybe 6 or 7 months, and then you're actually reduced to that spend. Finally, the routers that we're going to see in terms of a smart home context is what's called a border router. Now, this is specific to a technology called Thread, which is a low power mesh network. And there's other types of border routers out there for these different types of mesh networks. But we'll see in my future kind of milestones. Remember, I said we won't know what the future is, but we can know kind of when we're on our way. That's the first milestone I think we'll see, is that we're going to see all these low power mesh networks arrive and become more ubiquitous. Right now, they're kind of emerging. And the concept of this border router is unique to these low power networks, because if you see in the diagram here, the upper circles, the little gray circles, are kind of at the edge of the mesh network. And mesh just means that all of those devices can talk to each other instead of only talking to a central node. But at the edges of the node, those are probably battery devices, and we call them sleepy devices because they're trying to conserve battery so they don't wake up very much. Then in the center, we see those yellow kind of pentagons or orange pentagons, and those are also part of the mesh network, but they may be plugged in, so they don't have to conserve battery power nearly as much, and they can route a lot more traffic between them. But what they can't do is they can't route traffic to the internet. And that's where this super concept of border router comes in, is you may hear about, oh, I need a Thread border router. Well, all that means is that it's just a Thread device that's also connected to the internet. And what it does is it serves as a gateway out of your local home network to the internet. So all the orange and the gray, orange pentagons and gray circles can't access the internet in this diagram unless they go through one of those darker squares. And so that's what a border router does. So we now know all those different types of routers: the Wi-Fi router, the mesh router, the combo router or gateway, and the border router. And so I just want to kind of demystify that for you. So you can think of that border router like a ferry terminal on an island. So if you live on an island like close to the mainland, you can drive your car anywhere on that island. But if you want to get to the mainland, obviously your car is probably not going to be able to cross the river or cross the lake on its own. So in my analogy, the border router would be this ferry terminal, or the ferry itself, that allows your car to go over to the mainland, and it gets you off. And so the border router does the same for traffic that's bound to the internet, and it takes your smart home and allows it to connect to the main internet, and it allows those sleepy devices to save power. All right, so more types of smart home devices. So probably a lot of you already have a smart TV. It's hard to actually get a smart TV or a TV in general these days without one. But if you don't have a smart TV, you can make your TV smart with a set-top streaming box or a streaming stick. And these are great because, like that Apple TV I'm showing there, it also has a smart hub to control your smart home inside of it. So it actually will do a protocol like we'll talk about called Matter, and it has a Thread radio inside of it. And you may not even have used that or know about it, but it's in there, and it's ready to help your smart home be more connected. Third, in entertainment, you probably have a sound bar, and maybe that sound bar has Alexa inside of it. This Polk one that I'm showing here actually has a little Echo dot kind of squashed in the center of it. You can kind of see the ring there. It looks like it just kind of melted into it, and it actually has full Alexa control. And I apologize if my voice just set off your smart speaker there. And so the next one that we'll talk about is obviously a smart speaker. And this is the place where I do recommend a lot of people begin their journey, is to buy a smart speaker like an Alexa. And this is an Amazon Echo 4th generation that I'm showing here. And the speakers do the same thing as the soundbar, but they have usually a lot more features. And if you get one with a screen, then you can use that as a smart home control panel, as well as maybe watching videos or viewing the weather or seeing a whole bunch of stuff like your Amazon cart, something like that. Finally, all other categories. It's really hard to cover everything here. So I'll just do a catch-all category at the end, but I've already talked about smart cameras a little bit. That's a Wyze Cam battery camera pro and a Wyze Cam doorbell. And there's a Wyze lock. I'm obviously very biased here showing these different Wyze devices, but it was very easy for me to grab those graphics. But a lot of people, a lot of great brands make cameras and locks in a variety of different formats. So you shouldn't have to settle for something that you don't like. You should be able to find one that fits your exact needs, your color choices, your connectivity, anything you want. There's so many choices out there. Security systems have been really revolutionized by being able to connect to the internet, to get a lot of data, to send automated help on the way very easily. And they're aided, of course, by sensors. So you can have not only just security-based sensors like motion and contact and glass break, but also less security-minded sensors like a water leak sensor that I'm showing there. So that's the Wyze water leak sensor, and it will actually alert you if you put it below like your water heater or below an old toilet. It'll alert you if there's any kind of water that's present. The next category is in smart power. And so you may be able, if you get a new house especially, to install an energy saving or at least energy monitoring power panel. And those are often combined when you get a solar panel array or a power wall from something like Tesla. You'll want to be able to monitor those. And they can really save you a lot of energy because they'll turn off devices during peak consumption times, or they'll allow you to say, hey, it turns out my refrigerator door was left slightly open, and the AI in there can actually monitor that usage and say, hey, your refrigerator normally doesn't ever use this much energy. You need to go check that out. And you find out that someone left the refrigerator or the freezer slightly ajar, and it's wasting a lot of energy. That brings me to my next category, which is major appliances like a refrigerator in the kitchen or a washer and dryer in the laundry. And I think especially in laundry, it's a sleepy, old, stodgy, traditional category. And we're seeing it really come alive now with a lot of smart connected devices, a lot of combo devices. We're seeing some of the European technology kind of filter in where you have a combination washer and dryer that also has a heat pump. So you just stick your clothes in, let them wash, and then it will dry, and it will actually dry them not using even 220 electricity, just 110, because it uses a low power heat pump that saves you a ton of energy, and it's all on the same machine. So you just come back a few hours later and the clothes are both washed and dried, and it'll like send an alert to your smartphone when everything is done. So these next three categories I'm going to go through are all in comfort. So a lot of people do start with a smart thermostat because, like I said, it's very difficult to control and program some of the older models. So you may have a Nest thermostat already to control the comfort in your house. But some of the things you might not have that you may want to invest in is a motorized window cover or shade that also controls comfort. And so it can know when a room starts to heat up, it says, hey, I'm going to go ahead and lower these window blinds to stop the sun from getting so hot. Same with a smart fan or a smart humidifier or smart dehumidifier. It can automatically turn on in response to both the outdoor weather that it gets from the cloud or from an outdoor sensor or from an indoor sensor. And it can be very adaptable and very intelligent. Finally, there's so many other types of devices. I just had to make a catch-all category. And so I've just put in a whole bunch of devices there. In the upper left there, you can see a little device that's called a SwitchBot. And it's basically a smart IoT button pusher. Any of these devices that you have that are old that you want to make IoT, and you can, like I have a smart heater, non-smart heater that I wanted to be able to control via my smartphone. I put one of these SwitchBots on it to just turn it on via the button. So it'll actually push out a little finger and turn it on. And so there's a lot of things that you can do to make the rest of your house that's not smart, smart using some of these technologies. And so the other one up there in the upper right is a smart water valve. So if, for example, that leak sensor that I talked about does detect a leak and you're away from home, the water valve can shut off water to your house. And that's actually one thing insurance companies really like this. You know, this DreamBank uh, session is sponsored by American Family Insurance. And so a lot of insurance providers will be very happy if you have some of this type of technology in your home that will save them money and save you money on your insurance premium to actually prevent a disaster type scenario. In the lower left, there's the Wyze robot vacuum. That's one thing I use up here in my home office is I'll let that clean when I go out to lunch, and it does a great job. And then in the lower right is a Wyze sprinkler controller. If you live out where you need to irrigate your grass during the summer, that will control up to, I think, 8 different zones. And it does so in response to hyperlocal weather. It knows not only down to the zip code, but just down to a few hundred feet where it's been raining. And it can actually adapt and adjust your watering schedule based on the actual amount of rain received in your area. So very, very smart, very good way to customize and save water. Next area is you're going to probably want to invest in is a control panel. Once you get all these gadgets, you want to be able to control them with more than just your phone. And the simplest way to do that is with one of these, maybe an Echo Show or something that lives on your desk. The Google Nest Hub Mini is a good example. And it allows you to have that kind of visual and tactile feel that more than just the voice control. And it can be a lot friendlier to have these control panels all over so that you don't have to share access via a smartphone app to your guests or to your children. So the other place you would have this is, of course, on your wall. And you can have these wall control panels all over the place. You can replace your normal switches with them. You can make them up to, I've seen 15, 20, 30-inch control panels that you can get or you can customize. Or you can have them just the size of a single light switch. And you can see this one here, it's actually showing the time and the weather. I've seen really cool ones that will show you a video so that if someone shows up on your front door, your doorbell sees the video, it can actually show that video stream on all the light switches that you have with this screen and shows you exactly who's at the front door without you having to go peek through the window or look at your smartphone. It's very, very convenient. Next, there's these idea of a smart button, and the button is basically a wall switch that you can just put anywhere. If you want one on the bathroom sink or in the shower, or you have it wherever you want. I can have one right here at my desk, and it's got a lot of innovative control schemes. You can turn it or twist it or push it twice or push it 3 times. There's a lot of different cool things that you can get with these smart buttons. Now, these are the kind of the off-the-shelf things that I've been showing so far, but the neatest thing about smart home, I think, is that you can get super advanced and it's becoming more of a hobby for a lot of people, much like maybe gaming or photography or gardening or woodworking. You can tinker and explore and create endlessly. And if that sounds like you, if you really want to get into some of this exploration and advanced DIY, then I would suggest starting with a platform called Home Assistant. It's a very open, low-cost, expandable system that's got a huge community of friends that will help you. And you can get started with just a very low-cost device. And then if you can get more technical as you go in, and it provides you basically limitless customization. Now, if you're an Apple user, there's a similar product called HomeBridge that will actually allow you to customize your Apple HomeKit ecosystem. Then if you want to get really deep, you can start using the Raspberry Pi, which I'll show you here. You may have heard of this, but I wanted to show you just how tiny this thing is. The Raspberry Pi is what they call a single board computer. And basically it's an entire computer just the size of a deck of cards, no sound, no fans, very, very low power. But you can put something like Home Assistant on it. You can put a variety of smart home technology. You can even use them as sensors. If you get a Raspberry Pi Pico, there's 2 of them that I'm showing right here. I mean, look at how tiny these Raspberry Pi Picos are, and you can do a lot of customization, a lot of sensor input, a lot of really geeky stuff with them. In the same vein, Arduino is another technology. Arduino or ESP32 can make sensors like that. So this is a car that my son made out of an Arduino, but it's this little board right here. It's called a controller, and you can make a variety of smart home projects in addition to just robotics and programming and learning in general. So if you really want to go deep, I really suggest some combination of Home Assistant and Raspberry Pi and Arduino. Okay, so I'm going to give you kind of the secret decoder ring. We're running out of time a little bit, so I'll try to go through this pretty fast. But basically, all these different standards are overwhelming. And my question for you is just, why are there so many? And the short answer I can give you is that there are trade-offs. If we look at Wi-Fi, it's really good at fast data, really good at being widespread. It's extremely ubiquitous, but it's not so good a range, and the actual battery life can be just as short as days. I'm being generous when I say months for the battery life. Now, Bluetooth solves that. It's also very popular. It can have the LE version, the low energy variety, can have years of battery life, but the range is still fairly short. And it's in this 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, which is extremely noisy and crowded. You see how many of these things up here are in that 2.4 gigahertz spectrum, which just a fancy way of saying you've got a lot of people all trying to talk at once in the same space, and it gets noisy and can be very crowded. And Bluetooth, unfortunately, is extremely slow. So that's the trade-off of having that long battery life, is you just can't transmit much data. So you would never use Bluetooth, for example, to transmit video from a smart camera, for example. Thread seeks to solve a little bit of those issues, especially in terms of the self-healing nature. So Bluetooth normally is not a mesh network, although they're coming out with some Bluetooth mesh type networks. Thread solves the problem of range by having a whole bunch of short range devices talk to each other, so that if you have 30 devices, your entire network diameter can be huge. It also has great battery life. The problem with it is it's very new. It's very niche adoption right now. So I caution to wait a little bit, maybe let the standards shake out some more. Zigbee is actually the opposite problem. It's been around for a long time, but it never really caught on all that much. There are a lot of Zigbee devices out there, but they never got what I'd call critical mass, and the standard got so fragmented that it's really hard for me to recommend either Zigbee or Z-Wave devices right now. Z-Wave does solve a lot of problem with the frequency crowding, because it uses a different frequency spectrum. But again, it's really slow. It's a little bit shorter range than Wi-Fi, probably similar to Wi-Fi, but not definitely longer than Thread or Zigbee. But again, it's declining. And then for the niche applications, you can have a proprietary range of frequencies. This is a catch-all term for anything that's below 1 gigahertz. So Z-Wave is actually a subset of the 1 gigahertz, sub 1 gigahertz technologies. The good news there is that they can be tuned to have a very, very long range depending on your application. So if you get a specialty device, you may be able to have a sub 1 gigahertz solution that will solve that problem for you. So the future milestone number 2 that I want to talk about is trying to solve that horrid array of those standards. And so there's one standard that's supposed to solve all that. And we'll know that we're in the future when this actually becomes a true standard. And the standard is called Matter. And so you may have heard this term thrown about, but basically Matter is just this stack of Wi-Fi or Thread as the communications protocol that's provisioned. The password is sent via Bluetooth. So it has to have either Wi-Fi or Thread and Bluetooth, all communicating over the next generation of the internet protocol. So most of the internet has been IPv4 for a long time. And so this is kind of the next gen protocol. Problem is that Matter is trying to unite all of these things together, and it's just now another standard. So we'll know that the future is here when we actually see Matter kind of start to take over and become the de facto anything. For right now, it's just another fragmentation piece. Okay, so I'm going to take a drink here and go ahead and scan this next survey and tell me what's that next type of device, the next category you plan to buy. Okay, it looks like some responses are coming in. We got one with no plans. Oh, someone wants to buy some TV equipment, power and energy. That would be a great option. Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do that. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to try to give you some quick tips for getting started and then cover a little bit more about the future. Let me go back to PowerPoint. So there we go. So we can see that smart retro fridge there, and let's cover some tips to go ahead and get you started if you've never begun your smart home journey as of yet. So my first thing to do for you if you're completely starting out or just really at the edge is to buy a smart speaker. So buy either maybe an Echo Dot, an Echo Show, or a Google Nest Hub. Probably the Mini is your best bet. I don't think they sell the Max version very much anymore. Buy the one with the screen. Maybe if you're an Apple fan, you could buy a HomePod. I don't totally recommend HomePods yet. Very expensive and they lack a screen. But for all of these three things, I would really suggest that you wait for Prime Day or Black Friday. It's crazy the discounts that they give. Usually at least a third off, probably half off. So that's my first tip is to buy it, one of those guys, but only when it's a really strong deal. And then next, I want you to buy a color light bulb if you've not bought one already, just because there's the perfect balance of fun and utility. And I want to show you this really quick video about the Wyze color one that kind of hopefully will capture your imagination a little bit.
Night light, bright light, 16 million color night. Big yawn, windows drawn. Have Alexa turn it on. Soft light, deep light. Put your kid to sleep tonight. Late night, date night. Got to set the mood right. Dance hall, magic ball. Splash of colors on the wall. Reading light, bathing light. Change it winter, summer, fall. Kinda light, find a light. Perfect for reminder light. Drum light, flashlight. Don't forget the trash light. Imagination, conversation. Change it when you're on vacation. Unwrap, smart app, swipe, press, scroll, tap. Aquamarine, apple green, amber, ochre, grenadine. Turquoise, sunset, coral blue. Every day a different hue. Night light.
All right, so hopefully that gave you kind of a indication of all the different things you can do with a smart bulb. So my next tip is research whole ecosystems and brands, not just individual devices. So if you're an Apple fan, look at the HomeKit ecosystem, see all the different things that support HomeKit or Matter. Again, if you want to go super deep, try Home Assistant. I think that's the best place for you to start there. If you just want something super easy, then stick to Wi-Fi. Don't try Zigbee or Thread. And look for these logos about working with Alexa and Google Smart Home. And then, unfortunately, my biggest caveat about any of these ecosystems still is that security cameras are pretty isolated and they don't work that well with the rest of your smart home. They kind of started out very differently and they've been converging, but there's still too much distance between them, as you can see from my sad little security camera all alone in a cage. And then final thing to remember is that remember to read the app reviews before you invest in any of these ecosystems. I think a lot of the brands really get killed by a poor execution, especially the Android apps. The iOS apps tend to do a little bit better, but Android apps, if you're an Android fan, you may be really dissatisfied with quality hardware spoiled by terrible app software. Finally, I've got a short list of hidden gem companies that I think maybe get overlooked. In the Apple ecosystem is a place called Eve, and they have a lot of Matter devices. They really double down on Matter. Aqara is a great one as well, and they have a ton of very cool hubs. SwitchBot, I think, is one of the things that I invested in early on for that smart switch, but now they do so many other things, including this mopping vacuum that you see here that actually goes to a water source and fills up its own water tank and empties its own dirty water tank. I mean, it's super innovative. Sonoff has some really great switches. They're known for that. I think they get overlooked. An unintuitive one is actually IKEA, and they have a ton of smart home. They've made a huge investment in smart home, in the Matter standard, in Zigbee, in their own hubs. And so a really good cost to price ratio. And I think personally very biased, the best cost to price ratio, cost to value ratio, I mean, is of course Wyze. And so I highly recommend that you at least consider Wyze as a shameless plug. Now the future of IoT, I think we talked about AI, we talked about these milestones. So I think one that you'll see is computer vision, and I'll skip this video that we're going to see up here. But especially as we get more and more advanced ways to allow computers to perceive what's around them through images, we're going to see a lot more of the future really happen. And that's another milestone I want you to really think about, is when AI is able to truly understand your home through the lens of a camera that it's looking at. Fourth, I think the thing that gets people tripped up right now is that to automate everything, they have to write the rules. And you just go in and you point and click, and you have to do all these if-then rules. And so the future is going to be here once we've transcended all those rules. And there's a good stepping stone pathway to do that. Right now, we're just at the if-then stage. We're starting to use something called predictive analytics, which is like, if you've ever seen the movie Moneyball, it uses math and data, a little bit of data, to do some hunches and do some things that we think you'll like. But the next step that we're not there yet, but will be part of the milestone, is true machine learning. And that requires a lot of data and more sophisticated algorithms. As you can see from the bottom axis, it needs more data and more computing power. And then finally, I think we'll get to what I call sensor fusion is the term. So all the sensors in your house will work together, and you'll have deep learning algorithms either locally or in the cloud to truly understand what's going on and make really intelligent decisions. And then finally, I think the future is really going to be here once we see physical robots everywhere. So I want a robot that's going to do my laundry, as you can see here in that robotic arm that's gripping the Tide bag. And then I've heard rumors that even Apple is working on a robot now too. And so we'll see what their robot ends up looking like and see where that's at. So I'm a little bit running out of time. So let's go ahead and open it up for some questions if we can. And yes, that is first answer to your first question is yes, that is a chocolate smart lock.
Thanks so much for that, Steve. And as folks go ahead and have their questions come on in. Here at DreamBank, we're a community that is built up of fellow dreamers, and we always like to poll our presenters. But what's one piece of advice you have for someone who's actively pursuing a dream?
Myself?
Yeah, for you. Yeah. What's
Oh, yeah.
one piece of advice that you may give to someone who is actively pursuing a dream?
I love the Walt Disney quote where he talks about innovation, and the basic premise of it is that he keeps moving forward, which is the theme of one of my favorite movies called Meet the Robinsons. And the Meet the Robinsons was based on that quote that they show at the end. It's basically, in order to make progress at Disney, when he get frustrated, he would just take one small step and keep moving with positive momentum. So just keep moving forward. And so it's like that mentality of never giving up. You just got to make progress, even if it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back. It's still a net 1 step forward. So that's my advice, is to just keep moving forward.
I love that. I love that. Thanks for that. Going back to some of the devices you mentioned and the poll replies that you did at the beginning. If I'm someone who's looking to break into kind of a connected home, looking at kind of optimizing or streamlining my life and my family's life, what's and again, you did a wonderful job highlighting a lot of the technologies, how they work. What would be my best bang for my buck in terms of where I could spend my dollars? I know that's kind of a very broad, general question. There's a lot of different technologies. But if I'm looking to, invest some of my money into kind of making my home a little bit deeper connected, not necessarily where should I start, but what is the best value for my dollar when it comes to getting started?
I'm super biased. Obviously, Wyze has this slogan of too good to be true value. And so we try to do that. The problem with our ecosystem is it's not broad enough. You can't get all of the devices. So there's other brands out there that we really admire as competitors. TP-Link is one of them. They have a brand called Tapo, and which is their newer brand, or an older brand called Casa, Kasa. Both of those are really high value. Eufy is another really strong brand that offers great value. I would just be cautious about going too low in terms of price, because you need to understand their stance and their practices around privacy and security. I think Wyze has invested a ton of money into our security and into our privacy standards, and making sure that all your data stays your data. And so you want to be very careful about finding any device that has a low cost, but you don't necessarily know where the servers are located or how good the security vulnerability patching has been done, or what's the quality of the overall software and hardware architecture.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point that was built out in the slide deck, make sure to read those reviews too, right? And I think that'll be a good telling indicator.
Yeah, for sure.
Thanks so much for this, Steve. It's very informative. I definitely, had some really good takeaways here. Thank you all for tuning in and taking time out of your day to join us here. Again, this event is being recorded and will be shared to the email address in which you used to register. I want to also thank some internal partners here within American Family Insurance, the AmFam Venture team, to kind of help partnering with Wyze and bringing this event to life. But with that being said, we will go ahead and cap it there, and we will see you all next time. Take care.
Thanks so much, everybody.